Okay, is there anyone who's unsure of where they should sit? If you're unsure that you're in the right place, raise your hand. Vancouver. So Vancouver should be over there somewhere. Who's closest to Vancouver over on this side of the room? And you are? Wenatchee. Where are you?
I just didn't understand.
Excellent. Playing in Leavenworth. Is anyone else not sure if they're in the right spot? All right. Okay, you can put your communities down now. I think everyone's in the right spot. And at this point, we've spent the morning listening to a lot of folks on the stage and talking and giving you some presentation. Peeking around, it was absolutely amazing. But this is the point at which we're essentially turning the conference over to you. We're going to provide you with some guidelines, give you a path to follow, and to give us some more information about that will be Colin. I don't see Colin yet. Colin Brine. He's going to give you a little bit of overview of what the end is going to look like today. And we're going to talk just a little bit about it to make sure that you have a solid direction of what it is that we're going to be asking you to talk about at your tables. Actually, so one second here, Colin. So are you going to have more people? You have more? Okay. Okay, great. Perfect. All right, so everyone, Colin Brine's going to walk us through real quick.
Okay, now we're ready. Tech is our friend. You know, we've got a couple of sound and lighting geniuses behind the stage. And there's one of them, Todd, right back there. And we have our cameraman right over there. These guys are doing an amazing job. Let's give it up for them, right? You got all this great sound, pictures. Everything is being filmed, so you'll be able to see yourselves in the future. It's going to be pretty cool. So what we're about to do here for the rest of the day is something, of course, that's also never been done by a group like this. And we call it a 4D live action workshop. So, as you can see up in a 4D live action workshop, we engage leaders from our communities in this case, and we bring them together and they address a question and they explore that as a challenge. And then they create solutions to that challenge, and then they build their solution in a model that other people can understand, and then they share it with others. So that's what we're doing. So the 4Ds, excuse me, I gotta do the live first before the 4Ds. Live stands for leadership, innovation, vision, and engagement. All of these elements are embedded into the exercise, into the workshop you're going to do. So that's why we call it live. And we do it live. You get it? Right? Live. Okay, so you guys are pretty fast on this, so we won't spend a lot of time on that slide. These are pretty bright bulbs in this room, I know. So what are we gonna do? The 4Ds stand for, first, discover. So we have to understand and explore our challenge. And the context today is that we're looking at how we can enhance, create, improve some aspect in our community, so we grow better communities. And by doing so, when we understand how we can make a better community, Rotary can understand its relevance related to that improvement, that interaction. And of course, one of the avenues of service is community service. And when we start at home, when we start in our own communities, it emboldens us to do great work outside and beyond. So that's why we're starting with this. Next, we're going to design. So design is finding a solution that addresses that challenge. The first part, we find the challenge we want to engage with. The second part is we find our chosen solution to it. The third is we develop. We develop it by creating a model predicting your solution. So models and visuals help other people understand not only the challenge, but how you're going to solve that challenge. And it's a powerful metaphor, in other words, in order to share your big ideas. This is not a new concept. You see this all the time when people want to pitch an idea or create something. They show you a vision of what that looks like. And our context today is we're looking through the lens of reimagination. We're trying to look at things that may exist already that need to be looked at in a new way. It's an existing landscape that we need to look at with new eyes. So we're trying to reimagine something in our communities, especially where Rotary can play a big role. Lastly, we're going to deliver. So we're going to share our solution with other people, or have the ability to share it. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about each one of those steps here. So it's as simple as that. Discover, design, develop, deliver. So here they are a little more unpacked. So here's the end result of what you're going to accomplish during the day. First, in the discover, you're going to explore, understand, and identify the challenge or opportunity that you want to solve. And we're going to give you a little lens to look through, which we call the 8 C's of community identity. So it gives you different characteristics that exist in the community that help trigger ideas for you. We'll bring that up in just a second. Oh, by the way, the deliverable in this is a storyboard. Every phase of the D's, you'll have a one-sheet instruction that'll be printed out and on your table. For those of you who like printed out stuff. You notice we don't have much printed out stuff here. But we will today, so that's good. Next, you're going to design. So now you've understood your challenge. You've identified what it is that you want to try to solve. The problem you're trying to solve. So you're going to, in the next phase, you're going to identify your solution. You're going to do that by probably thinking of a lot of solutions, and then you're going to settle on one that you think is you're above all else, the thing that's really going to make a difference, the thing that's really going to solve that problem. So your deliverable there is a mind map of community connectedness. Now that's a wonky consultant mumble jumble words, right? Well, this is what I do. I try to confuse people with like terms I made up. So we'll show you what a mind map of community connectedness looks like, so don't worry about that. But you're gonna do that. So remember, these deliverables are all part of your model. You have to remember to make them all. So every phase, your success is getting a win with that piece and then moving on. Okay, so now you've built, in the first phase, a storyboard. In the second phase, you build a mind map of community connectedness. Next, you're going to develop. So now you know what the solution is. How are you going to share that idea with others? Well, you're going to build a model. How are you going to build a model? You're going to go to the model parts building store, right over there. There's 3 stores open for business right now. And you're going to get all the materials you need after you've conceptualized what your model is going to look like. So you're going to build a composite model consisting of a base. Over there are 16 by 20, I believe, foam board. That's your base. Everybody has the same base. So you're all working within the same space from your base, okay? Your end model contains whatever you build depicting the solution, and it is connected to your storyboard and your mind map. All of those have to be attached in some way. That's up to you to decide. You figure out how you want to attach it. So it's a composite model consisting of those three things. Okay? Storyboard, mind map, platform, and your solution in some form. We'll give you hints along the way, don't worry. Lastly, you have to deliver. You got to sell that idea with all you got. Now, we can't have every team, you're all table teams now from your communities, we can't have every team come up and do a presentation. We'd like to do that, but everybody has to go home before next Thursday, so we got to do that. So what we're going to do is, you're going to, after you know how you want to deliver it, you're going to make an up to 3-minute video. And in that video, you can do anything you want. You can sing, you can dance. You know, if Keegan is still here, maybe she can help us do, you know, some music videos. She's pretty good at that, right? So anyway, that's up to you. This is a creative exercise. This is a reimagination. So, but it can't be longer than 3 minutes. It's kind of like Shark Tank. You got to be ready to pitch your idea. And so we're going to catalog all those films. We're going to give you a place where you can upload them. We'll have them all, and you can watch any of them anytime. We're also going to be watching during the day, James and I, mostly James. And we're going to be looking at who's building what. And if we see three really interesting ones, we're going to have you come up on stage and do your presentation for everyone. So three of you lucky table team candidates will get a trip to the final three up on stage. And then we'll see who the winner is with applause, right? Okay. All good so far? 4 Ds, right on. Okay. So that's the end of the setup piece, James. So I think we're ready to get them warmed up with some ideas about what reimagination looks like and how we're going to build these models.
Yeah, so I've got it. Do you want my phone? No, thank you. So what's really important is Colin just outlined what's going to happen by the end of the day. We're going to be doing this piece by piece. Essentially, we're going to be spending an hour on each one of these. So you don't need to remember all of this. All you need to do is just say, okay, into the next thing, make sure that we're clear together, all right? And the first thing that we're going to be doing is discover. And one of the things I want to pull back and look at, if you remember, we talked yesterday about the mindset of a legend. With awareness, what am I focusing on? Beliefs, what's important to me, and courage, what am I willing to do, right? Those are the three things. And it's interesting, I mean, if you think back to Keegan's presentation, you can see those elements in what she was choosing in every single one of those to make work for her. Today, what I want you to do is I want you to do the same thing and keep those front and center for you today, because we can focus on the same old if we want. Of course we can. Or we can say, wait a minute, I'm gonna intentionally focus on something else. I'm gonna focus on something great. You know, wouldn't it be great if we could do this in our community, for example? Right? So challenge yourself, challenge one another to really think outside the box, to take that one step beyond normal. Now this today will be a challenge because remember, like with Who Are You? We just don't think that way. We just don't talk that way. The vocabulary is challenging because we don't use it all that often. And today, if you find yourself challenged and it's hard and you're a little frustrated, that's a good sign. That's a sign that you actually are trying something new. You're reimagining what can happen for yourself and for your community. All right? So if you find yourself in those moments, be like, oh, ding, ding, I'm actually doing it. That's a big key for you. Does that make sense, everyone? So in the Discover piece, what's going to be important is on your storyboard. So I want to clarify this and make sure. It's really hard. It's called the curse of knowledge. I know this so well up here, I forget to tell you important things. And one is that there is a 16 by 20, that's the base. There are also, over there are 11 by 17 pieces of foam board as well. Your storyboard will go on to the 11 by 17. You see the size difference there? So use the 11 by 17 to do your storyboard. Now, as part of the Discover, the storyboard is going to answer 2 questions. Why this and why now? And that is how, once you talk in generalities and you start to come to the end of our time, which will be right before lunch, you should be able to create a storyboard talking about your community, what you're going to do different to reimagine something that already exists, and that will help you frame out what the storyboard looks like. This is where we're starting, this is where we're ending, and here's maybe the roadmap on how we're going to get there, right? It's the building of the dream, all right? But right now, we're just doing it in our head. So the Discover piece is going to have 2 key elements to it. One is that you're going to talk in your tables for just a minute right now about any community that you've ever lived in. And maybe what were some of the reimaginations that happened? What were some of the changes? What were some of the great things that happened in the moment? And so let me give you a couple of examples before I do, so you know where I'm going. Carl, the mayor of Leavenworth, talked about reimagining or really imagining Leavenworth. Decades ago, they said, well, our town is dying. What could it look like? This is like living on Mars. What could our town be? What's the potential? And let's dream for a moment about raw imagination. And then along the way, there were a whole bunch of reimaginations that occurred. So Carl, where are you? Carl Ruther. So Colin, will you give Carl the mic? And so I want him to share a story real quick about where we're sitting and about this place and how it was reimagined. Please, Carl.
Yeah, this, if you can try to go back, let's say 50 years, was a fruit warehouse, a fruit packing warehouse. The parking lot back there was the addition of that. In front, that big parking lot, those two big buildings over here that are now shops, one being Starbucks, this area was all fruit packing. In a handful, but this little community that did not have was a gathering place like this. So a handful of us said, how are we going to make this work? We need to buy this building and preserve it, considering where it is right in town. And it took a while, but we decided, yes, we have to do this. So we went out and fundraised amongst ourselves. A lot of businesses wrote checks. Kashmir Valley Bank was one of them. We did. Others in town to secure the building. Then after we had the building, we needed to reimagine what that building was going to be like. And we just like we're doing here today, we had a storyboard and no idea was off the table. One design, I think, was about $11 million. And then we had to remember that this was Leavenworth, not Seattle. So we had to bring it back down to make it more realistic. And we used lodging tax dollars that we all collect. And is the other Carl still here? He may not want to hear this. Where is he? Okay, good. Because I being in the hospitality industry, I'm the one who was collecting this tax, and the mayor wanted to spend it the way he wanted. He wasn't the mayor then, but same idea. City government wants to spend it the way they want. We want to spend it the way we want. So we had to cooperate to come up with a happy medium. And that's where we are today. This is the Fest Hall, is what we call it, based on the German word, considering we're in Bavarian Leavenworth. And I think if you have questions about how that came about, come find me. I don't want to take up the agenda here. But it was a long process. We made it, and it's just about completely paid for. And that's the success story of Leavenworth, but more importantly, the success of actually cooperating with each other. And no idea was off the table. Everything is a good idea, but then you have to whittle it down to what will actually be realistically workable.
Well, if I remember, I've just heard the portions. Obviously, I wasn't here, but from what I remember, lots of people wanted to tear this down.
Yes.
It was an eyesore. It was ugly. We got to get rid of that.
Yep.
Right? And instead, there were a number who were just like, whoa, wait, hang on. Something else may be possible here, right?
That's exactly right, yeah. And some of the buildings were in worse shape than others.
Right.
But this concrete box was perfect. You can build a bonfire in here, it wouldn't hurt anything. Not that we didn't try, but the other buildings were they were older, different kind of construction, and they were really not usable for what we wanted to do. But this box was perfect for what we were trying to do. We didn't have it, we had nothing, no stage, no nothing. Early on, once we had the building, Lyman Boyd, the owner of the Bavarian Lodge, and I were doing all this. If we had events in here, we were the ones getting the events organized. We helped them get the tables and chairs. If we ran out of toilet paper, I ran to his place or he ran to mine to make this work. It's a long process to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
And long nights. If there was something that went wrong, we got the call.
Yeah. Well, so it's really great that you bring that up, because really our end of today will be the idea that we can share of something that we can change, reimagine today in our communities. You're going to be able to test it. You're going to be able to put it into action as much or as little as you want to, as much as willing as the people in this room have created. So it will be very tangible to walk out of here with. And this is the launch, it's the beginning. All of the hard work that Carl's talking about, that's to come. But the hard work it's a work of love, right? When you have a dream and you're all helping to achieve it, right? Very much like with Keegan and building her team, right? All of those same principles apply. We're just coming up with the idea. So when we get to the end of the discover phase, there are a couple of things. One is I want this reimagination to be as small as possible. We are not looking like, okay, we're not trying to achieve world peace here. And in fact, we're not even trying to re-envision what Leavenworth could be. It needs to be something that's more tangible that you can wrap your hands around. Something like reimagining your own version of your fest hall in your community. Or it could be something as simple as, you know what? And don't take this idea, but here, or you could take it, I suppose. We want to bring more people into the service leader tent. And that's going to include other service leaders in our communities. So once a month, we're going to have a meeting that's not just Rotarians, but it's going to be a mini version of this. We're going to come together and we're going to do some things. Well, what is it? We're reimagining who is included in Rotary. It doesn't have to be just members, for example, right? I'm making all this up off the top of my head, but that could be a possibility. How do we bring our community together so that we can do more? And what does that look like on a monthly basis? That would be a small reimagination, if you will, of what could happen in our community. Does that make sense, everyone? So something that's very tangible, something that's more granular than world peace or world hunger or anything like that, and create the storyboard of why this, why now. The easiest place to start is at your tables. Begin with some of the things like this fest hall that you've seen in communities that you've lived in, okay? And from there, it will help generate these ideas that you can then be like, okay, well, wait a minute. What if we took that kind of idea and we combined it with this in our community? What would that look like? And so by the end of our time, which is going to be 11:50, you need to decide on your opportunity for reimagination, your offer. Okay, what is the one thing that you've decided that you're going to spend the rest of the 3 hours on, and you need to have a storyboard for it? Just those two things. To help you do that, we actually have some guidance up here on the screens. So I'm gonna come back to this and leave it up so you can look at it, but it helps you kind of narrow down what are we talking about. Do we want to bring a whole bunch of artists together and have some kind of collective? We did this in Ecuador when we were living there, and it was called Ecuadorable. It was all for local artists, and how do we give them a place to show their amazing art, for example, right? At any one of these, this will help narrow down your conversation so you can talk about what's important to you. Does that make sense? So yes, I'm going to leave this up. There are printed instructions that we're going to begin passing out, which is essentially this slide, and I know you can't read it. It's broken into two pieces. This piece, and here's another one. All right, so as we move forward, I'm going to advance these slides slowly, but for beginning our conversation, this is the slide that's going to help you most.
James?
Yes?
Can I just unpack those just a little bit before we set them loose?
Please.
Yeah. So these 8 C's of community identity, these are different characteristics that every community has. And if you look at these might spark a certain characteristic or pathway you want to go down, instead of just looking at, wow, community is a big idea, and where do we start? Well, you can look into these characteristics and say, oh, now I recognize, do it like James said, do we want to go into the creatives? Do we want to go into connections? Does our community have a lack of connectivity and relationships that we want to look at? Causes, are there causes that either are underway or that have been underway for over a period of years that need to be rethought? Do we need to start a new cause? Those kinds of things. So if you look at those 8 C's, and again, we'll have this for you, or you can get a picture of it. But that's a good way to get to different lenses to look at this through. You can go to the next slide. So this is the handout, or the sheet, we'll make sure every team table has. We'll bring those out here shortly so you can actually have that and not have to look at this. But I want to walk through this a little bit because this is kind of your step-by-step way to approach this exercise. First of all, review those 8 C's. That's a good way to talk about that, or understand that. you know, and then as a group say, okay, maybe as a group, what are you more interested in as a C than another? So out of those, then you identify the most likely and appealing opportunities. So now you're kind of narrowing it down. So you've gone down a pathway or maybe a couple, and now you've said, okay, well, within that realm, you know, there's 4 opportunities, or there's 5, or there's 2. And then from those, you need to pick one. You know, the one challenge, the one opportunity that you want to solve. We don't like to use the P word, the problem, but you know, that's why we call it a challenge. But usually, I mean, if you want to use it as problem solving, it's something you want to solve, so the opposite of solve is problem, okay? So in this phase, what you're trying to do is have everybody completely understand what the challenge is. And so these are tools to help you do that. So as James said, you're going to do a storyboard, and it has these components in it. So you don't have to tell a story, like in a storyboard, like you're going to make a new sitcom. The storyboard just has these elements. So it's got a title, it's got a visual, it's got a picture, so you can draw a picture, a vivid description using a metaphor or language like that, or math, who it's going to benefit. So this is actually a clarity exercise. It shows that you really understand what the problem is or the challenge is. So if you do all these things, it means you've done your homework, you've vetted it, and you could help others. So it's like any campaign or cause you were trying to pick up in your own community or elsewhere, you would clarify all these things, right? And if you're going to bring other people on board, these are the things you need to show them. So that's why they're up here. Knowing your audience is important, and any important parameters or diagrams. So anyway, again, you'll have this sheet, but I just wanted to unpack it a little bit with you, give you a pathway. James, if you can pop up the next one. So that's the top of the sheet. This is the bottom of the sheet. So these are ideas you can use as you're trying to think of elements of your storyboard. These are just hints. They're not an exhaustive list, but they are ways to think about communicating your challenge to others. So, and you know, at the top it says interview your audience. You know, you're welcome to go anywhere else in the room or talk to anybody else in the room to get some information. So you don't have to just stay within your own group. That's probably why Carl left, because everybody's going to talk to Carl. So, okay, I think that's all I have. I'm going to go get those sheets. Turn it back over to you, James.
Yeah, so just so we're 100% clear, there are these 4 steps. We're only doing Discover right now. We'll also, just to save you a little bit of time, we'll bring the 11 by 17 foam board to your table while you're discussing. And the only thing that you should take off of those tables right now is maybe some other additional colored markers. They're over there. Everything else should stay on those tables. When it comes to the develop piece, when you're building something, that's when we're going to access those tables. But other than that, that's really all you'll need at the moment. I am going to be up here. Colin will probably be in the back. So if you have questions, feel free, come up and ask. We want to make sure that you know that you're heading down the right path. Okay, and with that, we'll be finishing at 11:50, and then we'll be moving right into lunch from there. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Break.